Shalom, holy brothers and sisters. This is the video for Parshat Beresheet, which is the first chapter of the Bible of Genesis. And there's something in the beginning of the chapter that's very confusing to me. I do not know the answer. If you know the answer, or if you can find the answer, please write it in the comments below or email it to me, because it's very baffling to me. I'm going to read the verses from Chabad.org, and then I will show you the problem that I have with the text. In chapter 1, verse 3, it says, "And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God separated between the light and between the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And it was evening, and it was morning, one day." So on the first day of creation, God created day and night, light and darkness. This is what's troubling me. I'm going to skip a few verses, and I'm going to go down to the fourth day of creation. And that is chapter 1, verse 14. "And God said, 'Let there be luminaries in the expanse of the heavens to separate between the day and between the night. And they shall be for signs and for appointed seasons and for days and years.'" So the luminaries are obviously the sun and the moon. "And they shall be for luminaries in the expanse of the heavens to shed light upon the earth. And so it was. And God made the two great luminaries, the great luminary to rule the day, the sun, and the lesser luminary to rule the night, and the stars." So here's the question. If the sun and the moon were not created until the fourth day, then what was that primordial light that separated between the light and the darkness on day one? Obviously, it was God's primordial light, but we always think about the day and the night, the sun and the moon, as that is what is causing the light and the darkness. But apparently, before the sun and the moon were even created, on the fourth day of creation, there was already day and night, darkness and light on the first day of creation. So this is kind of confusing to me, because God already made night and day and night before on the first day, and then he made the luminaries on the fourth day, and it doesn't make sense to me. So if anyone could help me figure out that problem, I would appreciate it. So then on the sixth day of creation, human beings were created, and I will read the verses. Again, it's chapter 1, verse 26. "And God said, 'Let us make man in our image,'" and our refers to, God is talking to the angels, "'after our likeness, and they shall rule over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the heaven, and over the animals, and over all of the earth, and over all of the creeping things that creep upon the earth. And God created man in his image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them." So the word for man is Adam. And Adam is composed of two things. Dam, which is blood, which is like meaning flesh and blood, and Aleph, which represents God. So human beings have two components: physical, flesh and blood, and spiritual, the godliness that's imbued in everyone. As it says, "And God breathed a breath of life into the nostrils of the first human." So our breath, which animates us, is our connection to divinity. Our soul is a spark of the divine. And the reason why this verse is important is because the first human being, the first person who was created, it says right clearly in the verse, male and female, he created them. So according to Kabbalah, the first human being was both male and female, like a hermaphrodite, like a Siamese twin when they were back to back. And then God saw that it wasn't good for man to be alone, for the person, because there was nobody to interact with. So then, as opposed to the idea that the woman was created out of Adam's rib, because the word in Hebrew is tzelah. Tzelah could be interpreted as rib. Tel is also shadow. So God made the first person sleep, and then he disjoined the male and the female, and he created the woman as a separate entity so that they could be face to face. So this is something that I find very fascinating, because there is this idea that Eve comes from Adam's rib, and but in the Bible it says right there in the verse that they were created at the same time on the same day. Yet another explanation that sort of reconciles these two different accounts of the creation of woman is that Eve was actually Adam's second wife. That Eve was indeed created from Adam's rib, and Adam's first wife, Lilith, is the one that was created at the same time as him. And what happened was that Lilith refused to be subservient to Adam, and therefore she ran away with Archangel Samael and left the Garden of Eden. So there is information about this in the Babylonian Talmud, as well as in Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism and Jewish folklore, that Lilith was his first wife. I'm uncertain as to whether or not they had children. I would be really interested to find out that information. But that she is perceived as being kind of mischievous, and some sources say demonic. But I don't know why, refusing to be subservient would make a person necessarily demonic. But there was a video on Chabad.org that was very interesting that said that Lilith was all gevura, which is severity, which is harsh. She was bone of his bone, and Eve was flesh of his flesh. Eve was softer. So that's an alternative explanation for those two different accounts of the creation of woman. And it's interesting because the Bible, if it was really all talking about the same woman, one woman, if it was all relating to Eve, then the Bible appears to not be going in chronological order, which we know that it sometimes does, because it talks about the 7 days of creation, and then after the seventh day, which is the day that God rested, which is the Sabbath, it goes back to talking about the creation of Eve, but that happened or the creation of woman, which is, we don't know the which woman, which happened back on the sixth day of creation. Also, there's some sources say that a day then is not like a day now, that a day then was like 1,000 years now. There is also a lot of misperceptions and misinformation about the tree. A lot of depictions show it being as an apple tree, but some sources say it was actually like a vine, like it was grapes, not an apple, was the forbidden fruit. So the verse says that God created Adam and Eve according to his image and God's likeness. So how are we like God? It's that we have free will, that we can create also. And when Adam and Eve first sinned, it actually created the beginning of forgiveness as well as repentance in the world. Because until that point, there was nothing to forgive, and there was no possibility of tshuva, of repairing our wrongdoings. So actually, their sin enabled us to have forgiveness and repentance, and these divine qualities are very important to us as human beings. Although we also are taught that if they hadn't sinned, that life would have been eternal. But apparently it was all part of the divine plan, because if God would have wanted us to be perfect, he would have made us angels. But since he didn't make us angels, he made us humans with free choice, and unlike angels, which do not have free will, that is why we have the ability to choose. And God says, and I put before you, good and evil, choose good so that you should live. So God is giving us a choice so that we can be responsible for what happens to us, for the consequences. And God tells us to choose good so that we should live. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Shabbat Shalom.